mind over matter. The space where life's messiest, most human moments become portal for power and purpose. Today, we are joined by Samantha Kane, founder of Roots Wings Wellness, holistic life coach, homeschooling mama, and soul guide. From martial storms to identity loss, health struggles to spiritual awakenings, Samantha's lived it. And more importantly, she's transformed through it. If you ever wondered how your breakdowns could lead to breakthroughs, this conversation is for you. Welcome to the show, Samantha. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
Mhm. So, Samantha, your journey weaves together so many threads: personal pain, identity shifts, and spiritual awakening. When did you first realize your struggles were part of a bigger calling?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think ever since I was young, I had a strong resonance with spirituality and just the bigger picture of my challenges. It just seemed like there was something out there that was just bigger than me. So I would have to answer you by saying sometime in my youth, and I can't pinpoint an exact moment in time, but it was just kind of an overall blanket statement of, there's something bigger than you and your struggles. And I think the interesting point here, for everybody that would also be able to resonate, no matter at what stage of life this happens for you, it's that it's such a interesting pull from the universe that it all of a sudden just taps you on the shoulder and it pulls you out of this tunnel where we all kind of think, oh, I have so many problems and, why me? Why me? But as soon as you start to step out of that and get a really good perspective and view, you start to understand that there is a whole world out there, the unseen, the that we need to tap into to be able to more deeply connect with ourselves. And so, even though everything I just said, I didn't understand exactly as a young child, I had the feeling and I did grasp onto that at a young age.
Mm-hmm. Right. And was there a specific rock bottom moment that became a turning point in your transformation?
There are honestly several. I know there's probably a lot of people out there that just have this like one massive pivotal moment. And for me, I've had at least a few. One that I can touch on that comes to mind is just even giving birth. Any moms out there will attest to this because it's such a beautiful story of triumph through mind, body, spirit. You're literally birthing a child into the world. And again, everyone has their own story and their own experience, but that's one of the most you can hardly put any words on it, but you could also write books on it at the same time, if that makes sense. It's just this mystical, magical, painful, traumatizing, but magnificent moment in time where you understand that, again, tapping into that, wow, the universe is so much bigger than me. Yes, I'm bringing a child in Earthside, but what a mystical, magical moment that the divine is entering into here. It's not just me and my physical body on this earth. It's a it's spiritual. And so for people to be able to tap in at any given point in their life through any kind of obstacle or challenge and bring the spirit side in, because I think a lot of people lose touch with that. You don't have to give birth per se to have these profound moments in life, but there are, even in the small moments, you can overcome struggle, even in your daily habits. Maybe, you wake up too late every day. It could be small things or tiny things. It doesn't have to necessarily be these massive um, awakenings per se. I think it's almost, in a sense, what you do with what you learn, whether it's big or small, from these challenges and how you overcome them in in your daily life, and then see how it unfolds in the evolution of yourself, your self growth.
So many of us resist the unraveling, yet that's often the doorway into real purpose.
That's so true. And there is a lot of resistance. And I that's a good way to state it. The resistance comes because we feel like the world is against us when our emotions are at a standstill. And we often have a fight or flight response to so many things. And especially as we go through traumatic events, emotional events, stress, cortisol rising, anxiety, fear, all the negative things that we go through, we often don't understand how to regulate our nerves and how to regulate ourselves and then live in a moment and make good choices from those spaces. And so when we are at these standstills, it's so important to understand that we should be living in a place and we should be trying to manage a motivation with flow, with living in flow. And that's when you understand, when you start to understand, and when you start to implement a flow state, this is when you will start to veer away from resistance, because when you resist, you're not being yourself. That's not who anybody is in a resistance. You're fighting something. And when you're fighting something, you're not being the loving, light-filled, soulful being that you really are.
Absolutely. And you speak of alignment with the higher self. In practical terms, what does that look like for someone still in the middle of their chaos?
So being being in your higher self, or aligning with your higher self, to me is, or I guess to many of us rather, is something that one could say maybe it's something to attain, but I don't like to say it that way, only because it's a forever long process of practice. It's never something that you attain and then that's it, game over, done, got it, I won. It's something that is a constant. And again, this matches with the thinking and the mindset of being in a flow state. It's something that once you're in flow and once you're very present, then you're making better choices. You're aligning more with yourself. You're being authentic. You're being more of who you are. And you're able and capable of managing your life in the way that you want to, not just how the outside external world views that you should. And when you're having authority over your life, you have a sense of freedom and a sense of purpose. And so your higher self is that place or space that you ebb and flow out of, because we're never always there. We're in these physical bodies. We're human. We're not robots. We make mistakes. We're learning lessons. We're growing. But when we can be in the mindset of a really greatly rooted, grounded space where we are able to remind ourselves as much as humanly possible that, would my higher self say this? Would my higher self do this? And when we rehearse these ideals, we can help ourselves reach these spaces of higher potential, higher purpose, higher learning, higher thinking, and essentially be living at a higher frequency to live with our higher self.
100%. And how do you help your clients recognize the difference between ego based choices and soul led ones?
So that's a great question. Thank you. This is something that I struggled with personally myself for a very long time. I was in the hustle game, and I'm not saying that you can't live in hustle without you know, spirit and not be in that egoic centered moment. I'm sure that's possible somewhat, but now well into my adulthood, I have learned over time that when you're living, and I guess I'm mentioning hustle because personally for me, that was the space when I was moving fast, when I was in a rush, when I was go, go, go all the time for years, something in me in the hustle aligned with an egoic persona, more so than any other time of my life. And it was troubling and a struggle because that was my own personal resistance against who I really was. For me, I honestly thought that being a go-getter aligned with the hustle culture and aligned with, showcasing yourself as this strong person. What I failed to realize at that time was that I already was a strong person, and showing vulnerability and showing emotion and slowing down a little bit to let people in um, wasn't going to make me look bad or not be the strong person that I am. But I had some kind of funny way of showing that. So to answer your question, when I when now that I've overcome myself, my own ego, it's so much easier to understand how to translate this once I get to know my clients a little bit and we go over this. I can tell right away if they are being ego centered or spirit centered. And so I'm able to help them navigate for themselves what that looks like. And in general, what it looks like, and how my clients get to know what's what there, ego versus spirit, is when they are making choices and living their life from a heart-centered space where they really are being genuine and authentic to their wants and needs, living life their way in their own free will, not in the likes of family or society or culture or government or whatever it is. They are basing their own beautiful thoughts around their own pure needs. And so they tend to really flow very well after I kind of understand what's going on with them. Like I say, I'm very easy to see what's going on with them, and I can communicate that over to them in a way that they can start to see it in themselves. And it's such an eye opener, such a spiritual awakening for them to start living in a place more spirit based. It's a beautiful thing to watch, actually.
I love that, guiding people to feel the resonance rather than force the solution.
Yes, exactly, because it's their choices. It's their life unfolding and unraveling. And what I think we forget often is that it's not about being told what to do or necessarily even shown. It's just a conversation that you have with people, or you listen to a podcast, or you're in a class listening to a teacher, and it's exactly how you personally resonate with that, like what hits, because you can't change someone, obviously. So how are they going to change with someone else's guidance? You're going to explain some things, you're going to give them some tools, but they're not going to get all the things all at once. Everybody's on their own time in their own way, and there's never one right way to do things because people need to make mistakes so that The next time they're like, "Oh, I did it this way. I'll never do it that way again." And then they don't ever again. We all have to go through our own process of trial and error to implement and then eventually integrate these transformations, and improve our lifestyle.
Definitely. And marriage, motherhood, and identity are deeply intertwined. How has navigating those roles shaped your work with clients, especially women?
Well, with marriage, interestingly enough, I've been through a bit with marriage. I've been through um, getting engaged and married early and getting divorced. So I've been through the heartbreak of divorce. I've been through having to move back in with my parents and kind of start all over again, and definitely had an identity crisis and went through, I mean, it felt like a death. It was the death of something I thought was supposed to last forever. And then going through the dating scene again, and this was many years ago before a lot of these dating sites were even around, or when they were first starting. So it was like more of a hush hush thing. It wasn't so accepted. Um, and going through all that, I went through a lot. And then coming through the other side and healing from that on my own. And of course, with some wonderful friends and family that were there for me in that time. And then meeting the person that's my now husband and will be forever. It's a wonderful place to be, but there was work in that, and the work came from me. The work came from within, and I really truly believe we would not we were not meant to meet until we did at the stages of our lives, because we had to go through the trials that we had to personally, individually go through to get to each other. And I know this for a fact because we actually went to schools right next to each other in neighboring cities and know a lot of the same friends, and we never met until decades later in our life. So um, that's an interesting thing. But as far as being a mother, that is an adventure. And, going through the ups and downs of having a child and the self-identity that you go through is massive. I personally, and many people, I'm one of many, many, many people, went through this experience alone. Yes, my I was married to this same husband, but he was working 7 days a week, and so I was really alone during the pandemic and raising a baby for my first time really by myself. It was quite an experience through all these ups and downs and panics and rabbit holes I was going through down, and figuring out all these things about the world and having a massive spiritual awakening at the same time. Um, and just trying to keep a baby alive. That was insane. And I definitely went a little bit crazy. But I found myself once again because I got through it. That's one of the key words that I say over and over and over again in my life is the word through. And as simple as that sounds, as menial as it sounds, getting through something it's the way through. It's how we get around or over to the next place and space of ourselves. And self-identity, it's I think it's a necessity in life to go through some kind of, I mean, crisis doesn't sound fun, but honestly, that's kind of what we all go through at certain phases of our life. We have these moments where, like, who am I? What am I doing? What's my purpose? And am I fulfilling it? I'm not sure. There's a lot of question, there's a lot of self-doubt. There's pity parties with some people, and or guilt or resentment or shame. I'm not far enough yet. I'm not where I want to be. For me personally, I've always been a self-driven, tenacious spirit. And so I've kind of just pulled myself, again, the word through so many circumstances that when I've had quite a few um, self identity moments where I've questioned myself like immensely, I did come through the other side because I knew that space, that headspace I was in, that wasn't the way to live. That's not who I am. Those were just some down moments that I needed to understand myself better through. Those are actually the moments we should all take a pause and say, it's not about why me, what's happening to me, it's what's happening for me, what's unfolding here, what do I need to see? And when we start to get curious with that, that's when the beauty comes in. Curiosity is one of the most powerful tools that you can use to unravel the space of feeling frozen or stuck and get yourself out of something and get yourself through to the other side. And that's what I've done with myself. And this is a huge part of why I'm able to um, help guide my clients through their own struggles with their self identity.
That's amazing. And do you find there's a common thread in what keeps women from embodying the truth?
A common thread. Um, let's see. I would say I think it's just limiting beliefs. I think it's that we doubt ourselves so much. I think it's that we're put in a pressure cooker and society tells us who to be and what our bodies should look like and what to think and what to say and what to do. I mean, with social media presence these days, which is obviously such a different world than when I grew up, there wasn't such a thing. We were riding our bikes on the streets, and if you wanted to get a message out to somebody, you rode your bike over to their house. I mean, obviously, I'm not a child doing that anymore, but, you know, this is a different time, and everybody is interpreting things in such a tweaked fashion because there's so much out there that is ruining people's brains. I think our brains are turning to mush because instead of holding on to who we are and grasping on deeper and becoming more of who we truly are, we are listening way too much to the wrong people. We are embodying traits of other people that they don't even fit our soul. We are following people and just doing things that aren't us. We're getting farther and farther away from our own truth, from our own soul. And so I think it's one of the most important things that you can possibly do with yourself in this life from birth to death for your soul is to align yourself with your higher self. How do you do that? By being yourself. How do you be yourself? You get to know yourself very, very, very well. All the pieces of you, all the best pieces of you. And you start to navigate your life through your career, through your family, through your relationships, through who you are being in society, how you're talking, how you're thinking, how you're acting, how you're reacting, how you're responding. And in all these little facets of your life, when you're able to design your life in a way that you're expressing yourself in a way that's the most freeing and true for you, then everything else starts to magnetize and attract in and everything else that's just crap that isn't really meant for you falls off. The people, places, and things, they just disconnect. They just go away. And all the right things start to connect. And that's where we want to be. That's where all of us should want to be. So these are the types of people that I love to help. They're just a little bit disconnected and they just need to reconnect back to themselves. And it's all possible, but these limiting beliefs really, really get to us. And we need to be mindful of who we're watching. Just it's like turn off your TV, just be mindful of the people you listen to, the people you surround yourself with, the thoughts that you allow into your life, and you will see the most incredible transformation within yourself. Everything will start to align in such an improved way.
There's something revolutionary about seeing motherhood and womanhood as spiritual path, not just as roles.
Absolutely. I love There's definitely a spiritual connection with motherhood. I mean, not just in the birthing, the pregnancy and the labor and the birthing process. I mean, that's very spiritual too, the mind, body, spirit, and in that moment, very much in your body. But when the child is earthside and when or children, um, there is such a deep connection to seeing yourself in your children and the growth that you're given the honor to watch and be a part of, because as mothers we are teachers, and it's essential that we steer ourselves away from the way that we grew up that we didn't like, the things that happened that um, weren't positive experiences for us. And so when you are a more conscious person in general, that will lend itself, when you're a mother, when you're a parent, that will lend itself so well um, to people, excuse me, to your children, because they'll get to experience the higher self parts of you, and perhaps break the chains and break ancestral trauma and generational trauma, and live a more deeply embodied, soulful experience. And this is what I wish for my own child and for any parent out there: is the deeper you get to know yourself, the more patient you are and take care of yourself, the better it's going to reflect into your own children's life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, Samantha Kane reminds us that healing isn't always graceful, but it is sacred. Whether you're in the thick of it or just waking up to your own truth, remember this: your story isn't a setback, it's your initiation. So, give yourself permission to rise, to rewrite, and to root into who you were always meant to be. Keep listening, keep transforming, and above all, trust the timing of your healing.